And another night was passing just fine. When I woke up, some potatoes needed to be put in the ground once again. And I decided to spend a little bit of time training that exploding rat despite the fact that it was raining. Didn't seem to like oranges too much, and I didn't have any luck. I planted some hops just to keep the garden going. Decided I needed to do some mining before going inside to dry off for a bit and have some pemmican. Place was a real mess as always, so I did some cleaning before heading back out to mine some more. I was hoping to get some stone chunks so I could make some more block. After mining for a while, it was back to training that exploding rat thing. As soon as the caravan came along, I was going to get rid of that little fella. By then the potatoes were due, so despite the rain, I got them all plucked, replanted, the best I could. Got a pretty decent harvest out of it. I was fortunate, and I got some of that stuff hauled in before sitting down for a nice tea. I was back and forth, planting, having more tea, and then I did a little more mining. I was spending a fair amount of time training that exploding rat. Not having much luck, in all honesty. I decided to go to bed because the rat went to bed. Next morning, cleaning was in order. My cooler had broken down in the kitchen. It didn't matter too much. By then, Hamlet needed some training as well. I spent some time working on him. And I was successful. Got him figuring out how to haul again. Then I was back to that exploding rat. Seemed like a big waste of time. I knew it was high time I was going to have to start reworking my priorities. That's what I was thinking about as I was having a beer, doing a little cleaning around the kitchen. I'd almost finished mining out some of the nearby limestone in the hopes of getting some more blocks out of the situation. And it occurred to me by then I was really low on steel. The way my traps are getting set off these days, I better stay on top of that. While mining, it was dark. I decided to chop a tree, build myself a torch nearby, just to speed things up a bit. After building that torch, I debated on going in, but figured I better at least accomplish some mining. My smoke leaf was due. While doing that, I got a call from an incapacitated refugee that I had no time to deal with. Turns out it's a whole lot of work for one person to deal with all this. There's a whole bunch of rotting corpses around I was getting sick of looking at. Every time I'd go out to mine, they'd be in my way. Decided to have some smoke leaf, keep my mood up a bit. Nothing like a good joint, mellow a fella out, make him forget about some of his issues. The fact that that girl claiming to be my sister had died was still upsetting me a bit. Probably would for a while. With the light of the torch, I was able to mine a lot faster. And while doing so, I got a call from someone being chased. Turned her away. At this point, my hands are well full, and I don't need any more troubles. After that, I was back to bed. Me and Hamlet had a good night's sleep. Lisa, one of the Huskies, became pregnant around that time. I wasn't sure if it was Boris or if it was Hamlet that had done the job, but it didn't much matter. More dogs were not what I wanted around here, in all honesty, and I was going to get rid of those Huskies as soon as I could. I mined for a spell, trying to get some more steel gathered up, and then it was time to get back to plucking some smoke leaf out of the ground. The rest of it was nigh on grown as well. I debated on just pulling it all up, but mining was priority. Considering that if people showed up, wrecked my traps, I'd be in a bad spot. I mined for a while, got some steel brought in. Hamlet's wandering around, making a mess out of everything, but I don't mind so much. I do enjoy his company. I plucked some hops, plucked some smoke leaf, and then I got right back to mining. Pretty soon I was going to have to find a new spot to mine. Occasionally I'd take a break for some food, or it'd get to be bedtime, so I'd haul in what I could before going and laying down to bed for the night. When I woke up, more cleaning was on the agenda. Seems like it never ends. After that, I decided I was going to have some fun. Threw some horseshoes. And then some pemmican was in order, being that it built up a man's hunger, all this work. I had a beer, smoked a joint, before deciding I'd better get back to work for the umpteenth time. Back to mining, which wasn't going too fast, given that I was rather stoned on smoke leaf, feeling pretty good from the alcohol as well. While mining an eclipse was on, but that didn't affect me too much since my torch was still present. Doing a fine job. I was about done mining out that vein of steel. Hamlet was helping me carry stuff in, which I do appreciate, and I decided I better get myself off to bed. Have another good night's sleep. In the morning, I decided I was going to need some more pemmican. I butchered up that timber wolf, some of the other critters I had laying around. Decided that the dogs should get fed as well. One of them was starving. After making the dog food, I delivered it. About that time, came down with the flu. I was feverish, shaky. Decided I better use some medicine to see if I could get myself right. Lisa, the pregnant dog, looked a little malnourished, being that I'd been neglecting providing food for him. These dogs are too much. All this work's too much, in all honesty. I had some pemmican after mining a bit, and then I laid down. And of course, one of my power conduits blew up, started a fire inside again. But being that nothing was made out of wood this time, didn't burn my whole house down once again. And I was happy with the decision I'd made to rebuild everything out of stone, despite all the work it had been. I got up, did some cleaning, had some food, and then I was off to bed. Was going to try and wait out this flu. While laying there, some visitors arrived, the eclipse ended, and a solar flare came in, killing all my power. One of those visitors had some stuff to trade. They didn't seem too excited to be walking around amongst all the dead bodies I'd left laying around. I hopped out of bed. I tended myself, see if I could take care of this flu situation some. I had some pemmican, plucked some potatoes, and then decided to talk to this fellow that had some stuff to trade, despite him milling around all the dead bodies. I wasn't feeling too well, but I decided I'd let him get the better of me. There was really nothing I needed from him, and he didn't have a lot of money. Finally finished mining out that vein of steel, deconstructed the torch I'd left over there, brought in what I could. When I got back inside, I had some pemmican. I realized one of my traps had been set off by a raccoon. After the pemmican, had myself a garden tea. Then I made a joint. Decided I better sit down for a while and rest before getting up to do some cleaning around this place. The mess never ends. It's starting to get on my last nerve. I didn't want to restrict Hamlet to outside. Something was going to have to be done around here. Certainly can't keep up with this. I focused on making smoke leaf joints, all the while thinking about how there was plenty of stone chunks laying around I could make blocks out of. But I needed all this smoke leaf handled. I had plenty of hops as well, so I decided to make some wort. More beer is always a good thing. Hamlet was helping me by delivering supplies. So I made a bunch of wort, and I had enough to fill a barrel. I got it put in there right away. Not that I was short on beer at the minute, but hey. I had some pemmican. Decided to sit down and enjoy myself a beer. And then a joint, because why wouldn't you, I suppose. After that, I was off to bed. I was still feeling the flu pretty bad. Forgot to tend myself, being that I got so doped up. And I jumped out of bed to take care of that, just to make sure I wasn't going to fall victim to this sickness. I tended myself, made a joint, then I was off to bed. It was a nice long night. In the morning, which would happen to be 1 a.m., given my extreme tiredness, I did some cleaning, ate some random scraps of pemmican I had laying around. I turned off the cooler that the dogs were using over in their little hut, and I decided I better make some more food for myself, seeing as I was getting low. And while doing so, needed treatment again for this flu situation. I focused on cooking pemmican better part of that day. I planned out a few shelves as well. I decided I was getting tired of wearing this helmet all the time. I'd only really need it when I got attacked, so I was going to put that right on a shelf. I also planned out a little shelf, keep the beer on. Meanwhile, though, the focus was to get a bunch of food made, so I didn't have to worry about it for a while. Took a break, had a little pemmican, planned a ton of cleaning, given that the place was such a pigsty always, and I didn't want to get sick from cooking in a real messy room. More smoke leaf was ready at that point, and I was feeling mighty overwhelmed with it all. I plucked what I could out of the ground, hauled it on inside, made a little more pemmican, and then I was off to bed. Another fine night. While laying there, I started feeling even worse than I had before. I realized I had some kind of muscle parasite going. I jumped up to treat myself for that, ASAP. I wasn't moving too fast, that's for sure. Tended my flu, tried to tend my muscle parasites, but had no luck. And then I got over to do some cooking, which probably wasn't the best idea, so I decided to shut that down, lest I make some bad food and get sick. And then I was back to bed. I was close to being over the flu, but the whole muscle parasite thing might just get the better of me. I decided to spend a day in bed. About that time, a weird buzzing started in my ear. Somebody called looking for help. There was nothing I could do. I would have to get up occasionally, treat myself. I thought a beer might be a good idea. Turns out, though, I think that was a bad move. It didn't stop me from smoking a joint, and with that, it was all my poor body could take. I went down, sick, just as I felt like that flu was past. Fortunately, Hamlet picked me up, put me back in bed. I wasn't flopping around on the floor. The muscle parasites had taken hold of me. The alcohol warmth left, but I was still pretty stoned. I decided no more booze, no more smoke leaf, till I felt better. I tried to get up and eat. I wasn't moving too fast, but I got that job done. I decided maybe I'd spend a little time with that boom rat thing. It felt like a big waste of time. There was no chance of me catching that guy, and I decided just to give up on him. I was moving slower than I'd ever moved before, and I felt like I wasn't going to accomplish squat, so I went back to bed. Realized I left my gun laying in my storage room, so first thing upon getting out of bed, I reacquired that, lest I get myself in a bad spot. There was plenty of hops around, so I made a little more wort. Got what I had put in a barrel. Did some cleaning, ate some pemmican. Life was feeling pretty boring, and I felt like I wasn't making any real progress on anything that was going to get me anywhere in the world. It was just day-to-day garbage, wasting time. I was finding that rather frustrating, as I was training that silly rat once again. Decided to have some ambrosia when I got back inside, and about that time, a mad turkey decided to make a dash at me. I thought about running out there, see if I could prevent him from destroying a trap, but there was no way, given how slow I was, that I was going to make it. Sure enough, he got himself killed on one of my traps. And I was hoping Hamlet would bring him in. And in the end, it felt nice to get outside, do something, so I went and grabbed him. As I was doing that, lightning started flashing. I could see smoke rising, not too far from where I was living. And that was a little unsettling given my experience with fires. But despite all that, I had to go to bed. I certainly wasn't feeling well. While laying in bed, an alpaca showed up and decided to be as friendly as it could. And since I'd been considering getting some pack animals, I decided I'd keep him around for a while. He came hauling butt into the home. At first my thought was I should slaughter him, but I was gonna need him if I decided to go trading with my neighbors, which I wanted to do at some point. I did need to keep him out of my house and out of my freezer. When I was finally able to get out of bed, I had a little pemmican, butchered up a rabbit, and it was time to make some more kibble for all these animals I had around here, which I was desperately wanting to get rid of for the most part. By then, it was time to treat my muscle parasites again, and I decided to finally fix that broken down cooler and build my shelves. I got one of the shelves built, took off my helmet and put it on there. If I need it, I could just run over there and put it on. It was nice to have that thing off my head. As soon as I laid down in bed, a whole bunch of mad raccoons showed up, screeching, setting off my traps. One of them got into a fight with my exploding rat, and despite me not wanting to get up, I decided I'd dang well better before that rat got wounded, came inside, blew himself up somewhere. It was a fight to the death. I could hear him screeching and clawing, and my crazy little rat got the better of that raccoon. Saved me a trap. He was pretty beat up though, that's for sure. I was gonna have to deal with that, and I was gonna have to build some more traps. Turns out I'm so slow, I didn't even make it out there. And that rat was not doing well. I figured he had about 6 hours to live, as he was running on in, lay down in his bed. This is exactly what I did, but I decided I better get up if I didn't want that thing blowing up in my dog coop. So I ran on out, got him tended. It took quite a while, given how slow I was, and he didn't get the best of treatment. But I was managed to batch the little fella up, get him put back together, and I think he's gonna pull through, which is fortunate. By then, my mood is about as low as it could be. I fed that little guy, got myself back to bed. When I woke up, it was 1 a.m. It was definitely time to do some cleaning. I was feeling a little bit better, certainly moving quicker than I had been. Cleaned for a spell, had some pemmican, went off to feed that rat, and didn't want him starving to death and blowing up either. Just one mess after the other. I came back inside, had myself a tea, and by then all my hops were ready. So it was back to doing plant work. After that, I sat for a spell, just relaxing, enjoying my space. I'd planned out some things I was going to build. I never quite got around to it yet. Then a cold snap struck, and I decided if I wanted these plants not to die, I'd better get out there and do some harvesting. Not that I was really short on plants, but you never know how things go around here. I better take what I can get while I can, else I might not have a chance later. I got all that stuff handled, the potatoes, the hops. Decided to feed that little rat and clean up the space before he got sick. There were still some potatoes that needed plucking, a couple hops. So I worked on that. It was too cold to replant, so I wouldn't have to bother with that right now. They were dying as I was plucking them out of the ground. But I got what I could. And in a month to about 100. Went back inside, had a little food, and then I was back to bed. When I got up, I had to feed that boom rat again. I'd planned on moving my table and chairs around. I was going to need to rebuild some walls around here, separate out my little butcher room. About that time, a whole bunch of pork meat fell out of the sky, and that felt like a bit of a blessing because I'd been thinking about doing some hunting, and that would save me the trouble. While running out there, I decided I probably should have tended myself long before running out there, passing all these dead bodies. But I got them done. I'd put the medicine on the second shelf I built. Sure enough, one of them exploding rats come through and set off one of my traps, and then a regular rat ran through, got himself caught on fire, followed by another. It was a real parade of mishaps. It wasn't my exploding rat that had died. With the cold snap, all the animals were starving, and somehow they knew there was plants to eat inside my area, and they all kept running in. They'd set off all my traps. It did make for a whole lot of dead animals laying around, which I could eat, but it also meant I was going to have to rebuild a bunch of traps. Sadly, I was so tired I couldn't do nothing but go back to bed. While sleeping, some coffee beans fell out of the sky, and that was nice. My whole homestead area was full up of animals running around, eating what they could get their mouths on, making a mess out of everything. I had to pull some beer out of the fermenting barrel, ate some pemmican. I was out of storage space for any more animals. There were rabbits, squirrels, deer. The place looked like a dang zoo. I don't know what was going on. I should have closed my doors when this started happening, but I had no idea. So I worked on rebuilding my traps, because should some of them idiots come in and try and attack me at this point, I was going to be in a bad situation. That needed to be priority. Trap building, about as boring as it can be. I spent way too much time doing that. Had to feed the boom rat occasionally, lest he blow up like the one that had come in and set off all the traps and messed up my wall. I kept focusing on delivering steel. As I was doing so, stupid squirrel went and set off another trap. I felt like I couldn't get ahead. I just said to heck with it all and went to bed. I got up at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, had some food, fed the exploding rat, and of course it was back to making traps at that point. I was going to have to do something about all these critters roaming around on the inside. I did manage to get my doors closed so no more would come in, so that was fortuitous. I almost had all my traps rebuilt off on the west side of my home. While doing that, of course, another power conduit exploded. My horseshoe ring was on fire, so was the cooler. I decided to repair the cooler and the horseshoe ring right away, along with some power conduit. And once all that was done, I was back to bed. The boom rat was fully healed at that point. He was a little bit hungry, and there was no food around since all those animals had run on in and ate everything in sight. Turns out they were after my kibble, which chaps my hide more than I'd like to say. I slept in the next day. Decided when I got up, some kibble would definitely be in order for all these critters. I was going to have to kill all these random ones that were around. Lisa was feeling fine. I was in need of some treatment. I finally got out of bed at about 8 o'clock. Used some of my medicine to treat myself, these muscle parasites, which just would not go away. And decided to make all that kibble, which I did, and it got delivered. And then I just kept on butchering creatures. I had so many of them around. I was about as crabby as a man could be at that point. Decided I better sit down and eat. Lo and behold, after doing so, I immediately got sick with some food poisoning. Because when it rains, it pours out here on the rim. I was tossing horseshoes, trying to feel decent. Hamlet's running around playing with the other dogs. Made my slow way on inside, deciding that it was a high time I went and rested again. The pain was pretty intense, and it wasn't going to be long probably before I went down if I didn't go to bed. So I went and laid, and the food poisoning progressed, as it typically tends to do. I'd barfed all over my bedroom. Somehow, that only made me think better of it, though. The next day, I kept on laying in bed, feeling a bit malnourished and starved, but sick as I could get. And then the food poisoning was passing. And about that time, a transport pod had crashed down. Some hostile fella. Didn't have long to live by the look of him. I couldn't get out of bed at that minute. When I finally could, some food was in order, and I was praying I wouldn't get sick from it. After that, some cleaning definitely needed to be done, and there was some beer ready to come out of the fermenting barrel. I nabbed one lickety-split, deciding it'd be the only one I have. And I did some cleaning. It was finally time to get back to making traps. Fortunately, nobody'd come around trying to kill me while I was unable to move. Then I decided all these animals that were laying around had to go. I killed a buck, a squirrel, a rat, and I decided these things had to be put in the freezer, because the more meat the merrier, I guess. There were still other things around. A rabbit. I was getting pretty darn good with this gun, I'll tell you that. I looked around to see if there was anything else, but I didn't see anything, so I thought the kibble would be safe for the minute. I still had to build all the traps to the south of my home. This is using up a good chunk of all that steel that I'd recently claimed. I worked on it all day. I was hungry as could be, so I stopped for some food, getting as crabby as I could about eating without a table. And then I ran off to bed, which was fortunate because my mood was so far in the toilet. I had a bunch of cactus fruit fall out of the sky the next morning as I was eating some breakfast. And of course, all the animals were out of kibble once again. Got a bunch of that made. And decided to butcher some of those creatures I'd slaughtered that had been walking around. I had a decent amount of pemmican, so I let it go for the minute. Decided to take a walk around and check out my little home area. Walking over people's graves. I had the thought maybe I should bury all those other people laying around outside, but in the end, I had my hands full here. Well, after the walk was over, it was time to tend myself. The muscle parasites were still bugging me pretty good. And I ran on out, worked on some more traps, while Hamlet was carrying in that fruit for me that had fallen out of the sky. And that was such a good boy, saved me all that trouble. I got some of the traps rebuilt, decided it was time for some food, of course, a little bit of cleaning as well, as it never seems to end. And then I was off to bed once again. Hamlet went with me. Come morning, it was cleaning time. As usual, the place just gets filthy on its own in the night. I had a meal in the morning, and only 2 traps were left needing to be built. On the south side, there was one left over on the west. And that was going to be my focus, since security is tantamount to this miserable planet. But it didn't take terribly long. All my traps were rebuilt. Then I decided, finally, get my table moved. Maybe I could do some building inside. Things were all beat up from power cables exploding, stuff like that. So I did a bunch of repair work on the walls. Planned out the actual wall where my butcher room was going to be. Decided I'd need a vent in there just to keep the heat flowing well and the coolness. And then I got to work on that wall. Planned out where to put the butcher table. I didn't quite get it all done before I was off to bed. I was still in pretty serious pain. Still thinking about that girl claiming to be my sister who had died. And while sleeping, more cargo pods fell out of the sky. This time, it was potatoes, which I had a surplus of as it was. But maybe Hamlet would bring them in for me, and then it'd be just fine with me. I was almost done with my butcher room. I decided I better put some more doors in there. Give myself a decent way to get in there without going through the freezer. So that's what I did. Got my vent built, and then it was just a door, moving the butcher table over. That was all done for the minute. I had some pemmican. Ran on out to repair some walls. Some fella named Betta joined me at that point. He had a sweet mustache on him, that's for sure. Wicked looking knife. Seemed like he'd be the type of guy I'd like to get into my smoke leaf. And he seemed like a reasonably healthy guy. In the end, I just yelled over the wall, tell him to get on out of here, he wasn't welcome. As much as I could have used some company, it'd be sad not to have it, I let him go. I smoothed floors for a little bit in my workroom, and then I was off to bed. Of course, while sleeping, muscle parasites acted up. I woke up to tend myself, decided I better do some cleaning as well. I was hoping in the next day or two here, I could finish the workroom, maybe even build my little prisoner/guest room. Who knows how far I'd make it though. Certainly wasn't making any progress on anything meaningful around here. One of my wind turbines had broken down, so I had to repair that. And then I was back to smoothing floors, seeing as I was almost done, before going off to bed. The muscle parasites are still bothering me pretty bad. And when I got up, I had a little bit of garden tea. I was wired pretty well on caffeine. And at that point, another cooler had broken down as well. It felt like it never ended around here, trying to keep up with everything. And I was going to have to reprioritize. I had some pemmican and sat and chilled out for a while. Wish felt nice just not to do anything for a couple minutes. After that, there was only a little bit of floor smoothing left and my workshop would be done finally. It's finally getting something done around here. And when that was finished, potatoes are ready to plant again. So I got that planted. I decided I was done with the smoke leaf. I had so much of it, I just got rid of it. I needed to reprioritize, get my stuff together here and start making some proper progress on meaningful stuff. And that was going to be my next focus, getting rid of all the superfluous stuff. I had a good night's sleep. Things were well for the minute.